So, ladies and gentlemen, every single year we have an instance in which Seth Kamens takes a vacation. Well, at least he thinks he takes a vacation. He says, I take this vacation until my clients call me, and then I no longer take a vacation. And that's fair. So, this week he is on sabbatical, I guess, from the show. He is in Spain with his family for the next, I think it's 5 to 6 days. He'll be back next week. But in his stead, we have Mark Rubin, who is I don't know how we describe this. He is definitely the mayor of Boston sports. He believes he knows everything about Boston sports. And he totally is the most optimistic Boston sports fan I've ever met. For those that are unaware of how Mark and I first met, I was interviewing for a job with the Federal Communications Commission. And Mark's on standby, so he's listening to this as we keep going. I was interviewing in the summer of 2000, so I have now known Mark for 24 years, over 24 years. And so that just ages us a little bit. And so I was interviewing for this one scholarship. So I came down from Syracuse to the FCC, and I walked into a woman's office. The woman's name was Lauren Van Wazer at the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau. And we talked for about 5 minutes. And she uttered the words, I'm sorry, Sean, you are no longer eligible for the scholarship, without anything more than that. And jaw-dropping, as I had just taken a 5-hour drive from Syracuse to D.C., with no indication that I was not eligible. And I said, and I was dumbfounded. I had no idea the reason Lauren and I got along was Lauren's parents had met at Syracuse University. And she said, yeah, you're no longer eligible for a scholarship. We actually want to interview you for a job, like an hourly wage, and you'd make more money in this job than you would the scholarship. Great. That sounds like an awesome idea. What do I have to do? You have to go see this guy named Mark Rubin. And I was like, okay, well, what do I need to know about Mark? Mark's pretty much a sports fan. I was like, okay. And I've dealt with my share of sports fans over time, and never thought interviewing with a sports fan would be an interesting thing. And I never thought that my knowledge of sports would come into play when interviewing for a job. Little did I know that would be the precipice for every interview I would ever do from then on. You need to find, for those that are listening that are younger or less experienced, find your niche. Find what sets you apart from everybody else. And Mark taught me that as I walked into Mark's office and I shut the door. And behind the door was a life-size Kevin McHale poster. Life-size. Kevin McHale is 6'11", so this is a towering poster. And we sat down, and Mark's introduction, Mark is not Kevin McHale's size. Mark is probably 5'4", give or take. I think I'm spot on there. Maybe 5'5". I walk in, and Mark sits down behind his desk, and I'm sitting right next to the Kevin McHale poster. And the first thing Mark says to me is, do you play softball? Well, yes, of course I play softball. Do you play the game the way the game was meant to be played? I said, well, my favorite two players were, unfortunately, the late, great Pete Rose and Lenny Dykstra. So by any indication, that would be I played the game the way the game was meant to be played. Can you play left field? Well, I play third base. The only thing about the difference between playing left field and third base is you really just need to be able to catch the ball. So, yes, I can play left field. Can you bat fifth? Well, I bat third, so batting fifth is probably not a hardship moving down in the order. Moving up would be a struggle. But moving down, no big deal. Okay, well, you're going to bat fifth. You're going to play left field on our softball team. I'll see you in a couple of weeks. And I was like, okay. So I stand up and I say, Mark, were we going to talk about law at all? Because I have a feeling that my job is probably legally based. And he said, Sean, I could tell that you could do the job via your resume. I need a softball player for my team. And I found one. So welcome to the team. I'm like, all right, well, this will be interesting. So I shut the door. Now, my job started on, quote, July 3rd. And if you are familiar with the FCC or any governmental institution, if July 3rd is on a Monday, which means July 4th is on a Tuesday, nobody shows up at the office on July 3rd. So I walk in on July 3rd in my suit and tie to an empty office. And I find my desk because somehow I found my desk. And on my desk was a book, Code of Federal Regulations, with a Post-it note, read me. And I'm like, huh. So no directions to the cafeteria, no directions to the bathroom, no directions to anything except this book says, read me. All right, well, I am definitely not going to read that book. There is no chance on earth I am going to read the Code of Federal Regulations because that would be like reading a dictionary. No chance. But I found Internet Explorer and I decided to, I don't know, read sports all day. First day on the job, I'm going to read sports all day. So the next day is July 4th. I see the fireworks. The 5th, I come in and Mark is sitting there and I go into Mark's office. And he goes, so? I go, so what? He goes, did you read the book? I go, no. Why would I read that thing? He goes, okay, I hired the right guy. And I was like, all right. So we get off on the right foot. And since then, Mark and I have kept in touch through city after city after city. Look, Mark stays the same. I go everywhere. And now Mark has 3 wonderful kids. I believe you had one of those when we first met, right? Natalie is over 2. Okay, so the 2 twins when we first met. And then Natalie is in LA. And he may move out to California to be the new Mitch Buchanan at some point, the Baywatch. So I am going to welcome in Mark Rubin. It is a pleasure. It has always been a pleasure. He has become more than just a mentor. He's become a friend. So, Mark, here you are. Welcome to the show. It is always great having you on during Seth's sabbatical or whenever I was going to say whenever Aaron Hernandez does something, but that's that womp or the Celtics win a championship, which seems to be more often than I'd like to see. So welcome to the show again.
Well, thank you so much, my friend. Some of that story I don't either remember or I didn't hear. You might be interested to know that Lauren is alive and well. And in the last couple of years, I'm Facebook friends with her. And apparently she has taken to hiking and Mount Everest and simple tasks like that.
That is all simple tasks.
20 and 30-day hikes, which is pretty impressive. But
simple tasks, as we all tend to do simple tasks.
Exactly.
As we get older.
The first part of that story I had never heard, so that was news to me.
Yeah. Lauren was like, "Yeah, you're not getting the job. You're not getting the scholarship, and you should have been able to see the look on my face of." I'm going to drive 5 hours or something. You could have told me on the phone.
Exactly.
It was quite a shock, but welcome to the show. Look, you have to be deliriously happy with where your teams are right now across the board. We're gonna touch upon each of them, but you're coming off a national championship in basketball, and if it wasn't for the Cleveland Cavaliers 8-0 start, you would be in first place in the Eastern Conference. Certainly you are in the Atlantic Division. Your Red Sox, while hold on. And Seth and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, where I had a Yankee fan actually say to me, we're due for a championship. Now, for a Yankee fan to say that to me, a Mets fan, it's ridiculous. And if you came to me and said the Red Sox were due for a championship, I would slap you upside the head because let's take maybe not the last year, let's maybe even not take the last 3, but in the last decade, you are on cloud 9, my friend. You have won in every single, you have winning franchises, number 1, and you have well-managed franchises in each and every sport. Look, I hate every one of them, but they are well-managed franchises. And you're on the up in everything. And I understand you may not think that after Gerard Mayo's interesting call at the goal line. But truth be told, when you're an NFL franchise and you are, I'll get your take in a second, when you're an NFL franchise and you're in the start of a rebuild, you don't want to win. You want to lose. So, okay, he messed up. It's a growing pain. Every coach goes through them. But you have a good coach. You have a great quarterback, a developing quarterback. And your team is devoid of talent. Congratulations. You won 16 Super Bowls in the last 25 years. You finally have a devoid of talent team. Yeah, I know how many there are, but that's the point. So let's talk your Patriots first.
Well, the post-Brady era has been a precipitous swan dive, which I suppose on one hand you could say, well, it's the greatest offensive player to ever play the game left. And so unless they were able to replace him with somebody in his ballpark, that this wasn't to be unexpected.
Sure.
What I didn't expect, though, was as you said a moment ago, they are so devoid of talent on the offensive line and at wide receiver that they'll have one of the top 3 picks in the draft. Hopefully, they'll get a lineman in the category of Joe Alt, or a wide receiver in the second round, or they'll trade down and pick up some assets, a player. But it's pretty depressing when one is so accustomed to them coming out and being the favorites to make the playoffs and go do a deep playoff run and make the Super Bowl. To see this now, it's hard to accept. Now that comes, of course, from a greedy, self-admitted masshole. I plead guilty.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going through your roster right now, and I'm counting the guys. Let's take the rookie class out of it, right? Because you can't really establish the rookie.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because The Athletic did a great piece just last week. They're getting virtually nothing out of this year's draft class except for Drake May. That's a big exception, right? He could be a star with the right support. And their number 3 pick, Robinson, the offensive lineman, is starting. I think he's pretty good. He maybe get better. But this draft class is not producing the way you would want a draft class to produce.
I guess what I'm saying is, if you look at their roster right now, how many of these guys will be on the next winning team for the Patriots? And I'm looking down it, and I'm seeing, so I think Mike Onuahu will be there, right? They just re-signed him. So that's 1, okay? Jermichael Hasty may be on there as a third back. Like maybe. Kyle Duggar will definitely be there. Duggar will definitely be there. That is 3. Stevenson will be there because running backs are running backs, and he's got a 4-year contract. He'll probably be there as 4.
And he's good.
Yeah, well, he's good. He's good, but I'm just saying, like, he's quality, and running backs are fungible, so you're not going to really care. He's going to be there, and he doesn't cost a lot, right? You have Christian Barrymore, certainly will be there. Okay, what I'm saying is you have like 5 guys or 6 guys.
Don't forget Christian Gonzalez.
Right. No, I'm saying 5 or so. Add a couple more. Right. You have 5 or 6 guys that in 4 or 5 years, because rebuilds in the NFL are not overnight to make yourself first of all, you got the most important piece, which is Drake May. If you believe in Drake May, which I believe you do.
I do, as long as although I do pray for his health and safety every time he takes the field.
Of course, but yeah, of course. But the fact is you have that piece, right? He's not Lamar Jackson. He should not be running like Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson should not be running like Lamar Jackson as a quarterback. But you have 5 or 6 pieces, which means you have 40 pieces not yet there, right? So when I say devoid of talent, they are as devoid of talent as the Celtics have talent. It is very much opposites.
Oh.
And yeah, we'll get to the Celtics in a second. But welcome, Mr. Rubin, to the rest of fandom.
I can't.
Actually,
I can't. I won't.
This.
You
had this. It was called the late 1980s, where, right? This was after 1986. This was after Tony Eason and before Tom Brady, right? Before Drew Bledsoe, 1992. Yeah, 92. So 89 to 92. This is where the Patriots are, or pre-1983, right? Before Tony Eason. This is the Patriots. But you don't remember that because you have such a gloryful quarter century that it's not. But this is what teams like mine go through. And that when you asked me last week, and I brought this up on the show, but I'll bring it up with you, you said if I had a choice, if Sean Palmer had a choice of Drake May or Aaron Rodgers at this point, I would take Drake May.
Yeah.
100%, 100 out of 100 times.
Yeah,
but
the age difference.
Well, the age difference, the contract difference, the nonsense difference, the general manager difference, all of it. But for a Jets team that's in a win now, I can't afford a Drake May. I can afford a Jaden Daniels, but I can't afford a Drake May.
Right.
And I can't afford a Caleb Williams either. Jaden Daniels is special. He is special. And you live in the DC market, so tell me what the DC area, we'll move a little bit off of the Pats. Tell me what how invigorated is the DC market around Jaden Daniels? Is it okay to be a Commanders fan again?
I have no idea. I pay absolutely no attention to the local teams.
Wow.
I am a masshole. Now, of course, the Hail Mary from 2 weeks ago, they're 6-2, I believe. He's going to be either the Rookie of the Year or the MVP or the offense. He's outstanding. He had, like Belichick says, he had 50 games in college, 55 games in college. He is pro ready, and he's being coached well. Their offensive line is better than people expected. And I hope he stays injury free because he's fun to watch. I just unloaded all I know about the Commanders.
Well, and I'll say this about Jaden Daniels is when Robert, and the comparison is going to be to Robert Griffin, right?
Yes.
It is inherently going to be there. The difference is Robert Griffin was running for his life.
That's right.
Jaden Daniels is running because he wants to run.
And
those are very, and Jaden Daniels goes out of bounds.
Yeah.
And Robert Griffin said, "Come at me," which is what Lamar Jackson did until last year, which was "come at me." If you notice what Lamar is doing in recent games, is thank you so much. I'm just going to go right now and go out of bounds. Right. Yeah. The same thing as Pat Mahomes, where Mahomes doesn't absorb contact. It's I'm going to slide because you are by far the most valuable player on your team.
And Drake May needs to learn that. Because I think he's a little bit too reckless. And, rookie enthusiasm, I get it. But if you want to have a long, productive career in the NFL, you got to know how to slide if you're the quarterback who's mobile.
That's exactly right.
Getting one last thing about Daniels, he also has a magnificent receiver in Terry McLaurin, who the Patriots and many other teams could have had. Recall, he was a third-round draft pick.
Sure.
Bill Belichick, in perhaps the worst pick that he ever did, was taking N'Keal Harry 5 years ago with the 15th or 16th pick in the draft, he's out of the league already.
No, N'Keal Harry was in the bottom half of that
No,
draft.
I think he was 15. Or am I confusing him with am I confusing him with the pick?
32. He was
32. But they passed on DK Metcalf. They passed on Brown.
Oh, sure.
So it just deplorable. Now he's had many successes too. So, and it's an imperfect science. I get it, but that one stands out. If he had, taken DK Metcalf, for example, we wouldn't have been talking a few minutes ago about the Patriots' need for a good wide receiver because they would have had one.
You're right, but you may not have Drake May.
That's
right?
true.
I mean, all of it is a flow down. I have a feeling that you are more on the pluses that Bill Belichick has done in his career for the Patriots.
You'd have to be a fool to be anything other than
I'm
that.
just saying, right?
I mean, we'll leave aside his politics. We'll leave aside his dating history. We'll just focus on his win-loss record, the number of rings, the fact that he's coached the greatest defensive player in league history, the greatest offensive player in league history.
Wait, who's the greatest defensive player in league history?
I would say Lawrence Taylor.
Oh, okay. I didn't think you meant from.
Oh yeah, no, I was referring to his entire.
Where are we going with that? Because
no, I was going to say Teddy Bruschi or Willie McGinnis.
I'm thinking who that could be, and I'm like, there's nobody on the Pats. Vince Wilfork, is my greatest pull ever.
Yeah.
So.
Right, but the dialogue between Belichick and Taylor 2 Manning casts ago was fascinating to hear them reminisce about just how destructive Taylor was, and how once the coach was fully Belichick in particular, because he was the defensive coach, realized what a destructive maniac he was, and they just set him loose, and he just terrorized the defenses.
Well, you get
the offenses.
Yeah, you get into the interesting concept though with Lawrence Taylor and any of these guys from the 70s and 80s and 90s. They're destructive forces, no doubt. Put them in today's game. Put them in where you can't hit the quarterback the way you hit the quarterback today.
Yeah.
Right? Can you corral that mania and focus that mania? And if you look at it today, how many pure sack guys are there? Pure. Yeah. You have your TJ Watt, right? You have your Max Crosby from the Raiders. And other than Chris Jones is an interior lineman, you don't see the guy that comes around the edge and just hits the crap out of the quarterback, because guess what? That doesn't work anymore. Yeah. So how many now granted, Lawrence Taylor probably was not in his right mind 90% of the time that he played, but could you corral that greatness into and make him what he was in today's game? I don't think that's even possible anymore.
No, but I think the talent and the coaching is there where he'd be a star no matter what.
I agree with that. I totally agree with that. Maybe as a middle linebacker, he might have moved in, right? Because Micah Parsons moves all over the place. Yeah. So you just have to be coachable. But I totally get that. All right. Let's move on to your Boston Celtics. Okay. 7-1. Jason Tatum, man possessed. Jaylen Brown, man possessed. They have put up 123 points per game, which I believe leads the league. They have given up 109 points per game, which is 5th in the league. By the way, so 5th in the league? No, more than that. They're like 10th in the league. But say 123 points per game. The offense is rolling. The defense is not rolling, but the defense doesn't have to be rolling when you're throwing up 123.6 points per game. You kind of wonder, can they keep this up based on what they did last year, right? Because they had a very, very long season. Tatum had an equally longer season. but there's no hangover here. 7-1. I don't remember who they lost to, but 7-1.
They lost to the Pacers in overtime.
And yeah, well, that may come back to root you, as the Pacers are now 3-4 and giving up more points than they get. But this team has very few, if any, flaws. Your flaw is at center, obviously, right now, until Porzingis comes back.
But the Horford, of course, is Horford. He's great. But Luke Cornett and my friend from Portugal, Nemias Keita, are doing an admirable job splitting minutes as the backup five.
That's right.
And Horford doesn't play back to back. So it's a well-assembled roster. I think their biggest enemy is complacency and or injuries, but Crazy Man Joe is not going to let that team get complacent. And I want to go on the record. What time is it?
It's 5:26.
In 2 hours, you are going to see Jason Tatum light up Steve Kerr and the Warriors for 50 points tonight.
Okay.
To prove a point. And too bad Jaylen Brown isn't playing tonight, because they both would have had 50.
Neither is Steph Curry. So
Curry's not playing? I didn't know that.
Curry's hurt.
Oh, no, he played against the Wizards the other night.
Oh, I thought he
was on the front page of the Washington Post sports page.
I thought he was still out. Okay.
No, he played. In any event, in my view, the most interesting story coming out of Boston sports right now is who will be the next owner.
Well, I was going to get to that in a second.
All right. Well, I won't. No,
it's a good segue,
because you pegged it right. Cleveland's undefeated record notwithstanding, I will literally be putting my money on the Celtics very soon. Thank you, BetMGM, as I did last year. And I'm looking forward to November 19th when the Cavaliers come to Boston. That'll be a great game.
So the only bet. So I did go to Vegas a couple of weeks ago. Now it's about a month ago, and I placed one bet, and it was not on the Celtics to win more. And I went in June. No, I went in July, and the futures were not out for the NBA, which was unfortunate because I had like 7 bets I wanted to make because I was all set. And
the only bet I do place is whether my team will win the title, and I will be placing that bet again.
I wound up taking only one bet, which is not looking great right now.
Yeah,
I bet the Wizards under 22 wins.
See, I don't do that stuff. It's win a title or not.
Under 22 wins. That's the only one I took. It was the over/under on wins.
So when I heard Rick Gross, go ahead.
So long term, right? Long term, this Celtics team, and I love to deep dive into caps and aprons and all this stuff. Long term, this team is sustainable in the fact that they're all in their prime. It is unsustainable in the concept of money.
Hence my point. The most interesting story out there in Boston sports is, who will the next owner be, and will he or she be willing to do what Grossbeck and minority owners have been doing, which is to pay a lot in penalties, second apron penalties, etc., and be satisfied with, to quote Wick Grossbeck, being paid with parades. I'm concerned that a John Henry type, I'm sorry, I called him by his wrong name, algorithmic John Henry, an algorithmic John Henry type will buy the team and be focused exclusively on their P&L statement instead of the duck boat parades that are our given birthright every June. So I would love it if some deep-pocketed person, not named Elon Musk, would come and buy the Celtics and do kind of what Steve Ballmer did when he handed Donald Sterling a $2 billion check, although this time it'll be a $5 billion check, and say, I would like to buy the team, and all I care about is getting paid in parades.
So I get that. Okay, so let's talk about the money here, right? In 2022, 2023, the Celtics paid $114 million in taxes.
Yeah.
On top of their salary.
Yeah.
In 2023, 2024, last year, they paid $66 million in taxes. Currently, they have $203.1 million invested in total salary cap allocations and are $7.6 million over the second apron, right? They are in $280 million in tax cap. Next year, 25-26, $500 million in penalties.
Yeah. Even Steve Ballmer
Doesn't pay that.
might blink at that. And
he doesn't pay it. He doesn't.
So this
you
is
know how we know that? Paul George is a 76er.
That's right.
That's how we know it.
So this is why I operate under the philosophy: enjoy it while you can, because the gang will not be held together for much more than a year or two at the most.
Yeah, I think what's happening now is in the next, and it's an interesting perspective I heard this morning. Right now you have you have the Laurie, right? Laurie A-Rod versus Glenn Taylor, right?
Yeah, the arbitration.
3 years ago, that sale was for $1.5 billion with a 3-year escalation. Right?
Yes.
And at the end of last year, Glenn Taylor basically put up his middle finger, said, you guys violated our terms of agreement. I want to backtrack and keep the team. Meanwhile, the team has doubled in value since the 3 years ago, is now valued between $3 and $4 billion. So that arbitration is going on right now, this week. In 30 days, they will get an answer. If Glenn Taylor wins, well, we're done, right? And probably A-Rod says, give me back my money, which he should. If A-Rod and Mark Laurie win, then you first have to go to the owners. And the owners could say, F you too. And then once again, they're back. And when have you ever had an ownership want to be forced to sell your team? Owners are 32 egomaniacs, narcissistic people who probably want nothing to be told to them and probably will reject it anyway and bring it back. So you have that. Then you have the Celtics. And then following the Celtics sale, and this is why the Celtics sale is so important, the value of the Celtics sale is going to determine expansion franchise fees. So the higher they are, and it will, you said $5 billion. I think you add another number. I think you're in the $6 billion category.
Okay. Yeah.
Because it's the Celtics more than it is the Charlotte Hornets. It's the Celtics. The difference is with the Celtics is you don't get Boston Garden. You don't get your arena. So maybe that takes some time, some money off. But $5 to $6 billion, and then we're going to look at 2 expansion franchises, probably one in Vegas and
Seattle.
one in Seattle, right? And then we re-jerry-rig all the system. But yeah, I don't know anybody that has $6 billion lying around. I mean, it is. Maybe Mark Laurie and A-Rod lose this and turn their attention with Michael Bloomberg just up the road, up I-95, and wouldn't that be an interesting mix? A-Rod buying the Celtics.
What I would love to see, and I think most massholes would agree with me, is to see minority owner Steve Pagliuca, who owns 20% of the team right now, expand his percentage up to 51, and he would become the governor. And because I think that he buys in, at least for the most part, to Wick's "let's get paid in parades" theory. Although, as you mentioned correctly a moment ago, expecting him to be fine with paying $500 million in penalties is probably beyond the pale even for him. But at least I think he would come close to the kind of attitude that I would like to see running the team. John Henry And the Fenway Sports Group is exactly the opposite of a ownership group personality that I would want to see buying the Celtics.
So, according to some websites, Steve Pagliuca, his net worth is about between $4 and $5 billion. So obviously needs some help, right? Is not going to be able to purchase. First of all, not going to be able to purchase 51%. Well, I guess it's only 30 more that he has to buy.
30, yeah, 31, yeah,
31 that he has to buy. But that's still quite a lift, right?
It is.
Again, there's going to be some private equity coming in, right? Because the NBA allows, I believe, up to 10% in private equity now.
Yep.
And that's going to take part, right? That's going to be definitely part of this. But these teams, the value, there are only so many people that can sit at this table that are not legacy owners, right?
Yep.
That are not the Herb Simons, that we were not Herb Simon, who owned the Bucks for the longest of times, who are not
Herb Cole.
Herb Cole. No, Herb Simon is the
Pacers.
The Pacers, excuse me.
Yes.
Herb Simon and Herb Cole. Well, Herb Simon still owns the Pacers.
He does, yes. Cole
Correct,
sold
right?
to the Lasry family.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. Like, there are only so many of these ownerships, the Bensons down in New Orleans, right? That make this their family legacy. And so you're going to have less and less of the I'm going to eat $500 million for parades and more. I got to make money. I got to make this back, especially if private equity is involved. They do not get into this for parades.
Right. And especially when the team doesn't own the building. So the only time they're making money is when the team is playing. You can't have when Taylor Swift or Bruce Springsteen or whomever plays at TD Garden, the Celtics don't get a penny of that.
Yeah, and that's all part of why these second aprons were enforced, right? Yeah. Is to keep not necessarily parity, but to keep when people say there's a loose salary cap in the NBA, there is, like, no doubt. They could go into the second apron if they want to pay it, right? But remember, there are things that go along with that second apron that are designed to tear down dynasties.
Yep.
Number one is if you're in the second apron, I believe for more than 2 years, your first round pick is number 32.
Yes.
Okay, so that's number one, the repeater. Number two, you're going to pay a boatload of money. Number three, you can't make any trades with anybody. You're done. Number four, you can't aggregate salaries in a trade. Number five, I mean, it just keeps going on and on.
No mid-level exception.
No mid-level exception.
Yep.
You can only get minimum guys.
Yep.
I mean, look at what the Phoenix Suns are going through. And granted, the Phoenix Suns did a wonderful job of supplementing their team for the lack of resources that they had. Everybody that has listened to the show in the last 2 weeks knows I have picked the Suns to go to the finals. But against your Celtics. But that's because Matty Ishbia is going to pay it.
Yes.
At some point, the rooster comes home to roost.
Yeah.
And whether you are willing to pay it once or willing to pay it 5 times are very different.
And Wick Grossbeck's dad, Irving, who is the majority owner of the team.
Yeah.
He was the one who put up the money, the big money at first.
And he was willing to pay it once.
Yes. And now that he's hit 90 years old, God bless him, his attitude is we need to put a stop to this because I have 3 other children and I'm not going to saddle them with a monster tax.
That's right.
So it'll be interesting. But on the court, the Celtics are a beauty to behold. They move the ball. They shoot the ball. They have the best defensive backcourt in basketball. They've got a coach who I think is crazy in a good way. And they're a pleasure to watch each and every time they take the court. And tonight should be a good game because Kerr is a good coach and Steph Curry is Steph Curry, of course. And they're a pleasure to watch. Unfortunately, despite the legacy championships, I don't think the Red Sox are a pleasure to watch. I don't think the Patriots are a pleasure to watch, and the Bruins currently are not a pleasure to watch. So,
well, here's my question with you and the Patriots, not the Patriots, the Red Sox, and this is more along the lines of just baseball in particular. How much of the baseball playoffs did you watch?
Infinitesimal.
So very little.
Very little.
Very little.
I watched a little bit of games 4 and 5.
Is that because you don't? Is it because you only watch Red Sox games, or is it because you just don't enjoy baseball right now?
So that's a good question. I'd say some of it is if the Red Sox were playing, obviously I'd be devouring every nanosecond. I was watching other things. Yeah, yeah. I thought, and maybe I didn't want to inflict pain on myself by watching Mookie Betts be the second best player on the team.
That's fair, and
regurgitating that the worst trade in modern baseball history.
Yeah, it's definitely up there. I mean,
so there are other things I was watching.
Fair enough. Because Seth is of the belief that baseball, and I watched a lot of the baseball. Okay, now granted, the Mets were in it, so that helped me, right? No question. They were a very fun team, very fun. They were just a fun team to watch, right? They're the underdog. How often does a New York team become an underdog? And the Mets were an underdog in every series they were in. But baseball itself, first of all, I cannot stand the strikeout, home run concepts, right? It's either hit or miss. And the Mets were totally different for that this year, which I think is what, again, lent me to loving it. I also don't like the fact that pitchers only go 4 innings or 2 innings or 1 inning, right? Where it's not baseball, and this is a get off my lawn concept, but it is. It's not what I grew up with. It's not what I enjoy. It is so statistically driven. Baseball more than, well, you can make the case for basketball too, but baseball certainly is, everything is statistically driven, that it's not a game anymore. It's more like chess. In that respect, when everybody has a DH, there's really no strategy either. It's just, let's play the game. I did say statistically driven, and this is another part of why. So I like the NBA offseason more than I like the NBA on the court. It's my brain that works through contracts. It's my brain that works through how trades are made, right? It's when you call me up and say, can we do this? And my response is, no, you can't because of X, Y, and Z. Basketball used to be, when the three-point shot came in, you had Larry Bird, right? Larry Bird could hit, I think the best Larry Bird ever hit from three-point land is like 42%, right? Do you know how many people are hitting 42% of three-pointers right now? Probably 50% of the league.
Yeah.
Three-point shot is not an accessory. It is basketball. And to me, that makes the NBA non-watchable sometimes.
Yeah, I disagree. To me, is it the same game of the 80s? The Pistons or the Celtics and the Lakers or the Bulls? No, but to me, it's I enjoy, maybe because it comes with winning.
I mean, you're winning.
But I think it's what it is with the Celtics. Yeah, they're hoisting up a lot of shots, a lot of threes, and some of the purists and the old people would say, get off my lawn. They're shooting too many outside shots. But the thing with the Celtics is that 5 starters, their top 6, play excellent defense.
Agreed. But here's my
two-way players.
So you play excellent defense, right? And Derek White forces a turnover. And I'm with you, right? Derek White forces a turnover. He now pushes the ball up the court. Okay. It's a 2-on-1. Okay. 2-on-1 going into the key, but you have Jason Tatum in the corner, right? In 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, that is a layup, 100%,
yes.
Right? Which is what, an 80% sure thing, right? Probably not, maybe even more when a 2-on-1. So instead of taking the 2-point sure thing It is, I'm going to ignore my running mate, and I'm going to find Jason Tatum on the wing for a kick out, which hits 40% of the time. And that, to me, is what makes the NBA sometimes unwatchable.
But it's funny you say that, though, because tonight we're going to see the greatest shooting guard in the history of the game.
Oh, it's this whole thing is because of Steph Curry. This whole month, when people say
he's revolutionized that position.
When people say name the players that changed the game, okay? These are the players in my brain, and I'm just spitballing here.
Yeah.
These are the players that changed the game. Will Chamberlain changed the game. First of all, George Mikan changed the game. George Mikan was number one, okay? Below the basket, George Mikan. Will Chamberlain changed the game.
Above the basket.
Above the basket. Kareem changed the game.
Okay? Away from the basket. But
By the way, since Oscar changed the game, because you never had a big guard until Oscar.
Yep.
Okay? Now you have basically a 10-year gap of nobody changing the game. It's called the 1970s.
Oh, you're forgetting one player.
In the 70s?
No, in the 60s and 50s.
Well, Russell didn't change the game.
No, I'm not thinking of Russell. Bob Cousy. Ball handling.
Yeah, ball handling. Okay, so Bob Cousy. By the way, Russell didn't change the game.
Okay.
To me, Russell didn't change the game because Russell just did things that, first of all, Chamberlain could do. He just didn't.
True, except Russell was the first center, now he'd be a power forward, to bring defensive prowess and rebounding to that position in an exceptional manner.
Right, but you just made things that people did better.
True, okay.
The things were being done, right?
I hear you.
Okay, so now we move on. The 70s didn't change the game at all. I don't know one person in the 70s that probably changed the game. Maybe David Thompson and Julius, because they were playing above the basket.
Yes.
Right? So let's go with David Thompson and Julius. Now we get into the 80s. And obviously Magic, being a 6'9" point guard, changed the game, right? Bird changed the game because of shooting, right? Because you never had, truth be told, not to be racist, you never had a white guy that did what he did, ever. So now you've got Jordan, right? Now you got Jordan. And then it's Curry. And that's it. Those are the guys that changed the game.
You wouldn't put Duncan in that category?
Why? Duncan was Bill Russell.
Okay. All right, I'm asking.
He didn't do anything. To me, he didn't do anything. What, his bank shot would be the only thing that did that.
Maybe. I was going to say his longevity, but yeah.
Okay, that's not changing the game.
No, I hear you. No, you're right. Okay, I agree with everything you said.
Those are the guys who changed the game. Before Steph Curry, when you and I were growing up, we practiced layups. We wanted to dunk. That's what we wanted to do, right? You can even make a claim that maybe Vince Carter also changed the game with the way that he dunked, but that's just an extension of Julius Erving to me. That's not anything more. Now you go out to a playground. It's not how I can do a behind the back layup.
Yeah. It's raining threes. Yeah. All the drills that these guys do are designed, the step back, free yourself, get behind the line, fire it.
That's right. And to be fair, and while we're talking about people that have changed the game, you can put Caitlin Clark in there too, because Caitlin Clark changed the game in extending the line, right?
Correct.
So Steph made the 3-point line very fashionable, but Caitlin made the logo fashionable. And it's a different logo, and I get that. It's a different game, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And now you hear not only girls, but you hear guys stepping back and going, the Caitlin Clark, right? Where it's like,
that's great.
Right. That's amazing, right? Which is why the WNBA I have told Seth this on this program. I enjoy watching the WNBA more than I do the NBA. First of all, I believe that fundamental basketball is better in the women's game than it is in the men's game. Because you're not playing high. You're not dunking. You're not doing that stuff. But that's why the WNBA will go on strike this year. But that's a whole different game.
Yeah.
Okay. We got 10 minutes left. I'm going to give you your last word. I need to jump off in 5 minutes. So please tell me something that you would like to speak about for a couple of minutes. Your last word, Mr. Rubin.
Well, I'm going to avoid talking about the election, since that's always a charged topic. No, as I said earlier, I think the most interesting story going on in Boston sports is the Celtics ownership thing, and we should know in a month or so who the bidders are. I think that as I mentioned earlier, my disdain for the Fenway Sports Group and John Henry and Sam Kennedy in particular is high. I view that they are purposely neglecting a public trust, which is the Red Sox, simply because they're good business people and they're making a crap load of money on the team, notwithstanding the fact that they are putting out a desultory or a semi-desultory product on the field. The Patriots, I think, will be good. It's just a question of when, and can Drake May stay alive and upright and healthy in between the time that they become contenders. I think it's going to be interesting to see who Bill Belichick will be coaching at the beginning of next season. I'm thinking it's going to be the Cowboys, but he is wonderful to listen to in all of his various formats. The one I watch the most is the Monday Night Football Manning cast when he's on in the first half of them. But I do watch sometimes when he's on with Pat McAfee, and he's got a bunch of other formats. It was just, I said I wouldn't mention politics, but I thought it was interesting that I'm guessing that it was Belichick who invited Trump to be on the Jim Gray Let's Go program, even though Jim Gray does try to interview the presidential candidates every 4 years. In any event, be that as it may, it'll be So I mean, and then the other thing, which is a joy to be a Boston sports fan, is the Boston Globe is still, in my opinion, has the best sports page in America, bar none, and has had the best sports page for decades. I mean, and the fact that Dan Shaughnessy, who is, I think, in his upper 60s or early 70s and just is recovered recently from major heart surgery and is still churning out great, funny, pithy articles at least twice a week. And then all of the others who are still good, Gary Washburn, who's the beat writer for the Celtics and doesn't back down and is never intimidated by Joe Mazzulla's terse answers, Belichickian answers, sometimes a little better than Belichick, but it's a pleasure. So it's great to see the product on the court, talking about the Celtics, and then it's great to read about them, whether they win, lose, or something in between.
Fair enough. So first, I'd like to thank Mark for joining. It's always a pleasure.
My pleasure.
And we'll do this again as the months go on in this season's. One thing we didn't talk about a couple of weeks ago was the death of James Earl Jones, and the fact that how legendary an actor he was, how legendary a person he was, and we equate things to sports all the time. And he was 93 years old, a true legend in his field, but also he had two of the most iconic roles in sports movies, in Field of Dreams as Terrence Mann and in The Sandlot, which I continually forget that he was in The Sandlot. And so if you're looking for a feel-good story this week, right, where you're going to shake your head perhaps this week a couple of times, right? You're going to look to be invigorated by something else, or maybe go back to your youth. Check out The Sandlot.
All right.
It is an amazing movie. Also, I will start my travels this week. Next year, next year. Next week, I'll be in Phoenix. The week after, I'll be in New York. And the week after that, I'll be in Connecticut. So we will have the show's going on the road, ladies and gentlemen. And we are working towards having a show in Africa in January. So we'll look at that.
Wow.
By the way, David Rubin has pumped in his thoughts that you should add Bill Russell, Magic, Bird, and Jordan to changing the game. Well, we did put 3 out of the 4. And we will be talking about Elliot Wolf as the years go by. So for Mark Rubin and Seth Kamens, who's in Spain, lucky him, I'm Sean Palmer, Seth and Sean Sports. Thank you very much to everybody. Have a great week and go watch The Sandlot.
Talk to you soon, my friend.
Absolutely. Thanks.